You're listening to a podcast by Change My Relationship, featuring licensed marriage and family therapist and author Carla Downing. These podcasts are designed to provide you with practical solutions based on biblical truths for all your relationships. Today, Carla will be interviewing a guest who has experienced a relationship problem and successfully worked through it.
So we are back at Change My Relationship podcast, and we are going to do part 2 with John and Ann, who are talking about their marriage with his diagnosis of bipolar disorder and how they've navigated that. And truly a remarkable story. If you haven't heard part 1, please listen to it. They talked about when they met and what the early marriage was like and what it was like when the first episode happened and as they were navigating through that. But in this part, we're really going to focus more on kind of what we call the solution. It's like, what did Anne do that kind of made a turning point for her and gave her some new tools and that she could use to figure out how to respond to it? And then what are some of the things that John was able to do that has gotten them to the point they were at? And they'll tell you about some really, really positive events in their marriage and what it's like now. And it's really a success story. It's really wonderful. And we'll just to recap, in the first interview, they said by every counselor that they went to that they would probably divorce, that people do not stay married when there's a diagnosis like this. And they found that very discouraging. And Anne was saying that she's had a hard time finding any groups that are supportive. Mental Health Strong, is that the one you were talking about that does have the
group? That is correct. Yeah.
So I'll put the Mental Health Strong and NAMI in the notes, but in the podcast notes. But yes, that it's very hard to find those things. And so the fact that you guys have come out and you have such wonderful marriage now, and it's so much stronger, and it's really remarkable, and it's really, I want people to hear it, to know that it's possible. So okay, so we kind of left off with talking about what it was like with you and taking care of the 5 children, the home, and while he was still pretty depressed, lethargic, sleeping a lot, and that type of thing. So let's start with, you came to my classes about that time.
Yeah.
You learned some tools that helped you. And this didn't happen overnight. I mean, this took quite a few years of you learning them, figuring out how to apply them, because you learn the principles and then you figure out how do they work in my situation. But at the same time, you also get healthy yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get healthy yourself, you're going to keep doing things the way that you were, and it's going to continue to be not healthy for you, because I'm pretty exhausted and mentally. And you were telling me, I don't know if I can stay.
Yeah.
I can do
that. That is true.
And I think one of the things, when you were, I hope it's okay to say this, but I think one of the things that was, usually when somebody tells me that, I'll say, well, where could you go? And you were like, I probably have to move in with my mom, with my 5 kids, far away from all my friends and their friends. And that will be a little bit crazy to live with my mom with 5 kids. And I don't have a lot of money to have a choice to do that. So had you had a lot of money, or had you had just like an easy place to step out, one of you might have just been like, yeah, I'm going to go. But and you also knew that that wouldn't be the best for your kids, but you still wanted it to work if you could, like most people do. But that divorce is not a happy thing. Divorce is a sad ending.
It is.
So many ways. So you came and you were ready to learn. So tell me about some of the things you learned and how you applied them and why they helped.
So I would say I wasn't ready to learn in the beginning because I was so tired and so emotional and so just broken. I really came in the beginning because someone else there listened to me. The small groups had other women in difficult marriage that were able to listen, and they didn't judge me. They didn't think I was an awful person for possibly wanting to leave or for complaining about his sleeping or the mental illness or whatever. And so in the beginning, if you talk to a few of my group mates, they'll say that I cried every week. Every week I cried, probably for the first year, because it was just my only place to talk to another adult because I was around kids all day and talk to someone else who at least somewhat understood. And then you have the aspect of your teachings and the coursework that I did throughout the week. And that really sustained me in my focus because it was really easy to look at all the bad. It was really easy to crawl into that hole and just be sad and give up. I like school. I like learning. So it was really good for me to take it out and to read the book and to do the questions. And that is what sustained me. I think it just, I mean, I probably took the class at least 3 years in a row. So that would be what, six or eight classes in a row. And then it started settling in. Like then the truths were real. They weren't just pretend or me trying to pretend. So in the beginning, having support was very important, to someone else I could talk to. Having somebody speak truth into me that was not Christianese, was not I'm doing it wrong, was not toughen up and just pray about it. Like having truths, biblical truths were huge for me because then I wasn't at fault. I had so many people in my life telling me that I was causing his mental illness, and and it was close friends and family, and it was so disheartening. But to go to class every week and hear that it wasn't my fault, to learn that other women had these difficulties too, to learn that there was hope if we could work it out. But I had to stop crying. Like I had to get my own self out of that hurt and out of that pit. Psalm 40, I said to myself over and over again, because he pulled me out of the mire, he pulled me out of the pit, he set my feet on solid ground. It may have taken me 3 or 4 years to get on solid ground, but I knew that his hand was holding me. And a lot of that has to do with the truths that I was learning every week in your class. As far as like how I was supposed to get better, I guess that's the first step. I learned that I had to get better first. I remember having a conversation with someone in care ministries, and I was complaining about my husband not wanting to work, sleeping all day, and yada, yada, yada. And he said, well, that's all good, but what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? It's not my fault. And he was like, yeah, you need to be taking care of you, and you need to be making sure that you are healthy. So seeing a counselor myself was helpful, but there was still no truths in the counseling. It was a lot of me talking, but no truths. So once I started reading, especially Women in Difficult Marriage, and going through the chapters, learning how to detach from his reactions or his choices were huge, because then when he chose to sleep, it wasn't personal.
Right.
I always felt like he was choosing to not love me at that moment, so he was going to sleep. Or he was choosing to not want to be a part of Christmas morning because it was too much work for him. But honestly, it was the mental illness. But at the time, being so enmeshed in his illness as if it was my cause or something that I could fix was the mistake that I made.
Gotcha.
So detaching was huge for me, realizing the lies that I was telling myself in my head, that I could fix it, that I needed to do better, that I, instead of letting God take over for that and putting the appropriate boundary after I took the boundaries class between myself and my husband. It was the only way that we then started to see improvement for both of us. I finally had a boundary that said, you take your meds or you can't stay here. You get up and shower every day. You try to find a job. Like I had a list and I had a time frame. And then he didn't take me so seriously. And then I remember after having gone through the class a few times, I asked you, what do I do if he doesn't do it? What do I do if he doesn't get out of bed? What if I do if he doesn't take a shower? What do I do if he doesn't take his meds? Then what? I think I just assumed that if I told him he would do it. Obviously, we know that's not true, but at the time, I really had convinced myself that that was true. And so when he didn't do it, we had a moment. I think I had a moment with you actually, and you said, you need to tell him that he has to do this or he can't stay there anymore. And I was like, what? No Christian woman in the church would ever say if they don't blah, 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 they can't stay there anymore. But it honestly was what we both needed. So I sat him down on the couch and I told him, look, you haven't done what we talked about, and you're not stepping up. You're not getting a job. You're not trying to get out of bed. You're not trying to take care of yourself. So you can't live here anymore. And what did you say?
Well, I actually heard those words and I was angry inside. I was like, what are you talking about? This is,
I know.
it can't be this bad. It can't be this bad, right?
Yeah.
I was in shock and I was angry and I refused to leave actually.
So
I
mental picture or physical or mental picture here. He crossed his arms, he sat on the couch in a huff, and he said, I'm not leaving and you can't make me.
Okay.
Well, I guess I did that, but that is pretty much how I remember it. It was like I was hit with kind of an ultimatum,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking to myself during the process, I don't think it was instantly, but I thought to myself, if I don't change, I'm going to lose everything that I love. And that ultimatum was very helpful to get me off the couch, get me up and trying and making me make the choice to keep what I loved in my life. Which was my wife and my kids. And I had a whole bunch of emotions like, we built this together. You can't just tell me to get out. I'm not, it takes two to make five children and it takes two to pay bills and we have a house together and all these things. And there was a selfish side that I said, no, I don't want to lose this. And so it left me with the choice that I had to make the change in me that was necessary to stand up and get healthy and make good choices and shower and get off the couch and get work and get back to being successful again in life. And so it was a really helpful outcome that led us. Yeah, it was definitely a turning point in this situation.
We re-talked about boundaries at that time because I was like, what do you mean you're not leaving? You're supposed to say, okay, I'll leave. Like, why are you not leaving? And that's when I came to you and said, he's not going to leave. I have to leave. I have to take the kids and leave. But I really didn't have an option. Like, I really didn't. My parents lived 45 minutes away and the kids were in school and I just couldn't leave. So I remembered the chapters on speaking my truth. And so I sat him down on another occasion because then I wasn't so angry that he said no. And I said, okay, if you're going to stay, then, and we outlined boundaries again. And I said, I'm out. I'm not helping you anymore. This is all on you. I have to take care of our children because you're not. And I walked out. It was a little more than 10 words, but I really tried to do it in less than 10 words. But I walked out and then I checked out. I was done. He was going to do it or he wasn't. And this was when he was going to prove that he could. And I was going to do my best to take care of myself, to take care of our children, what they needed, and practice getting myself healthy. And he did take some baby steps. Not right away, but he did take some baby steps, got out of bed, and eventually got a job.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I think
if you're
I
hearing
remember.
this and you're as a listener and you're hearing that any similarity to this, we're not saying that the person with the mental illness doesn't need time to heal.
No, for
Right.
sure. That's true.
There's going to be a downtime. There's going to be a down period where
Yeah.
the person's down for the count, and but
But
the
this was
reality is you've
years.
got to get up at some point.
Yeah.
You've got to stand up and will yourself or change your mindset or do something,
Faster.
get your medicines corrected, get with psychiatrists, get with psychologists, get with counselors, get with friends,
Right.
and work hard at building back up to a stronger point.
Yeah.
And you just can't stay down.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
that's where we
think restating that a different way, I would say the family doesn't have to take anything and everything and suffer and be harmed while the
Yeah.
person with mental illness or any addiction or any problem gets to do whatever they need to do without accountability and without
Right.
having to take responsibility.
Right.
So we have lots of compassion, which I think that Anne demonstrated that she loved you, she tried to keep the family together, she was trying to help you. She had compassion for that, but she couldn't do it anymore. It was
Right.
just absolutely overwhelming and starting to affect her too negatively. And we haven't talked about how when this is happening, resentment grows because I mean what you're talking about is your wife isn't your wife anymore. She's your caregiver,
Yeah.
and caregiver don't feel like having sex with their people that
Right.
they are taking care of. They don't feel like being intimate and close and sharing. You're not sharing things as husband and wives
Right.
really like your mother or your caregiver, and that's not healthy. So it does break down your relationship too for it to be like this. But I think that it has a lot of impacts on your relationship, and obviously you are not back then where you are today, which is you're in a happy marriage where you still got
Yes.
struggle. We all do,
Right.
but
Yeah.
you can tell that there's give and take and interaction. And my guess is you were not talking about this situation this way back then.
No,
No.
no.
What were you saying? Not much to me.
Yeah.
Not much to me. He had a lot of these thoughts internally. So honestly, it wasn't until years later that I knew what he was thinking then. It's in nature, I mean, typical, it's just hard for him to have express his emotion. So adding that all in with the illness at that time, I definitely didn't have we didn't have a two-way conversation very often.
I'm a very internal, cerebral type of
Yeah.
thinking type of person. I don't know if that has anything to do with the mental illness, but I cycle and think through lots of different scenarios and options and situations and kind of mentally challenge and all, I'm very high functioning. I've been a performer and excelled in work and success and careers and things of that thing. Still, it doesn't mean that I'm a crippled individual necessarily, but but yeah, you still can be a high functioning person and have mental illness issues.
And
Emotions. Sorry, go ahead.
with bipolar disorder, you tend to have people that are highly creative, and
Yeah.
your musical side and your performing side, and so
Yeah.
that actually and a lot of thoughts. You probably are a person who's not the introvert. You're probably an introvert instead of an extrovert. So you do a lot of your own internal thinking and
Yeah, I was more extroverted when I was younger, but I became introverted extremely after the mental illness. I became very inward focused I work from home now on a side job and stuff like that. I became very introverted because I didn't know what I was dealing with and I didn't want to have an episode in front of somebody outside in the public,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, I became very cautious about how I held myself.
yeah, and you were anxious. So if the anxiety keeps you from wanting
Very,
Sure.
to like go
Yeah.
out and interact and stuff like that. So yeah, it has a lot of
yeah,
ramifications. Uh, so
yeah.
she told you you had to start doing it on your own, and you were first angry, and then you were motivated, and then I'm sure like you said, it took a while for you to get to where you could do that. But
Yeah.
were you telling yourself, I have to do this or I'm going to lose my family? Or was there a point where you started to be like, this is good for me, I want to do this? I mean, what
I
was
would think that
your
was years later. That
yeah.
was years later. And now I'm kind of thriving again, even though I've had multiple experiences with paranoia, anxiety, different episodes we could call smaller in scale than 2010, but had many different experiences that are medical experiences. I'm still in a much better place. We've come to discover with psychiatry that I needed a very little dose of medicine,
Oh,
Mhm.
a very small amount of regular, consistent medicine. I was diagnosed once we moved, and that's kind of a whole other topic, but we did kind of lose our house and move as a couple.
But you're saying that when we were in the other home, the psychiatrist we saw there prescribed something different.
mhm.
And when we got here, insurance didn't cover that medication. And so the psychiatrist that we ended up with here gave him a sample of something because we didn't have any money. Neither of us had jobs to pay for anything. So he took samples of this new med, and it was like night and day. It was such a God thing that the insurance didn't cover the other one, because he like woke up and was able to like look me in the eye and was able to like read body language again and care about like what he looked like and what our home looked like, and wanted to go to church. Like, it was just, it did help to be in a new state, a new city, a new church. Absolutely. We didn't have the eyes that we thought were watching us before. It doesn't mean that people don't know here, but less people know because we're more careful on who we trust. Like, we test the water before we tell them, because
Mhm.
we don't need that again. Like, we're starting over, we're fresh. And now with this new medication, we also added in lithium on top of that. And believe it or not, it's been a miracle, because we can add and subtract that a little bit and we can stop an episode. And before, we didn't know we could do that. So that has been huge since COVID in the last 5 years, to be able to say, I think you're cycling right now. You didn't really sleep last night. Are you okay? Checking in. Did you take your sleeping pill? And we can call the psychiatrist and she can say, yeah, he seems a little anxious. Let's just add like a hat for a couple days and help him to calm down. And it's taken us straight out of that could have been full blown episodes into just maybe a week or so instead of years like it used to be.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually you've got to treat it with antipsychotics, but also a mood stabilizer. And so lithium is a
Right. So
mood
he
stabilizer. Yeah,
he has all of that plus an antidepressant.
yeah.
So we have antipsychotic, the lithium, the
Mood
depression,
stabilizer
and
and then
anxiety.
yeah, and
Yeah.
anxiety. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
sleeping pill, because a lot of that makes you not want to sleep or not be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So he does take the,
Well, and I was also diagnosed after the move
oh, yeah.
with a diabetic as well. And I was attributing some of the things, this is the lack of knowledge that we had. I was attributing a lot of my side effects and my sleeping on the couch and my tiredness to some sort of mental illness problem. Well, when you eat 10 Oreo cookies with a diabetic, you're going to sleep on the couch 5 minutes later. So I was eating unhealthy. I was having sugar that immediately would put me to sleep. So just as a side note, if you have any other health issues, make sure that those are clearly defined in your life as well,
Yeah.
so that you can identify that it's not always mental illness that's causing the side effect,
Yeah.
but you may have other health
Yeah.
issues to
Yeah. It
just
doesn't get
be aware
blamed
of.
for
Yeah.
everything.
Right, right.
And the way that you're interacting right now, You're talking about like what he's doing with his meds. You're giving him feedback about what you're seeing, like, hey,
Yeah.
you're kind of manic, or you're saying things that aren't making sense. But there's a
Yeah.
difference from before. You're not
Yes.
taking responsibility for all of that with him. You're partnering with him
Right.
like you would do with a husband and wife as partners. We support each other and we
Yeah.
know what's going on with each other. And when somebody does have mental illness, they do need the other person. The same thing with the diabetes. You would say, it seems like you're going to the bathroom a lot. You,
Yeah.
I think you're going in there too much to urinate. I think there's something going on,
Yeah.
or you seem like you're
Right.
kind of out of it. Are you in a sugar coma? So
Yeah.
it's you give feedback and you
Yeah.
work together, but you're not taking responsibility because he's participating fully.
Right. And I would say that was something I struggled with for a long time. And I could see that others would struggle because I want him to be responsible for himself 100%. He's not my child.
Right.
But when I was fully hands off, like when I said, you do it, I'm walking, right? There were some things he couldn't do by himself.
Correct.
And I was mad for a long time that he couldn't do them by himself. You are a grown up. You should be able to. But fast forward to now, where we, like you said, we engage in conversation. I'll say, I think you were up last night. Probably shouldn't be sending an email in the middle of the night. Are you okay? Or being proactive in reaching out to a stressor. Like we had a couple that we're very close with that was causing immense stress for him. And I just reached out to them and said, look, you need to back off. This is too much for him right now. You can talk to me or you can not, or you can wait, but you cannot talk to him about that right now. And
Mhm.
he just needed to breathe. He needed to have the cycle over and we needed to talk about it rationally. And then we went back to them when we were ready to have the conversation. But prior to this healthiness, I would have been mad that he couldn't just tell them to leave him alone
Right.
or that he couldn't just see that he didn't sleep last night. It seems silly now, but at the time, I just wanted him to be a grown up and not have to take care of him like that.
Yep.
But you're right in knowing that now that we are in a partnership, and I would expect him to take care of me the same way I would want to take care of him if that were me.
hmm And I think it also has to do with acceptance, grieving, the grief
Yeah.
process. You got a lot. I talk about the grief process a lot now because
Yes.
I find more and more. It's a huge part of this. Like when you're
Huge.
recognizing anything, it could be like even when your son was diagnosed with that illness as a child, you've got to go
Yeah.
through a grief process. But when you
Yeah.
recognize that you've got mental illness is not going to be cured. It's there to stay. It can be treated, but it's not going to be cured. And it is going to affect your life. And that is the reality. But you have to go through the denial, the anger, the bargaining. John has to go through it too. And
Yeah.
then the sadness and then the acceptance. And once you're on the other side with the acceptance of, okay, this is in our lives, will be a part of our marriage. We have to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
That acceptance allows you to look at it and say, now what can we do? And with you guys both working together, it
Yeah.
it becomes possible.
Yeah. When I first took that class at the very beginning after his first episode on bipolar, they talked about the grief process. And the people leading the class talked about acceptance. And I thought they were crazy. I was like, no way will I ever get there.
Right.
I was so upset. I was so disheartened. There were so many things. And I went back and forth in the grief process, all around and around. I honestly probably didn't make it to acceptance until a few years ago.
Yeah.
And this has been 14 years. It's a process and it's definitely you have to allow yourself grace and you have to allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Yes, but I wanted to stay in that it's not fair stage. I wanted to stay in the this is not supposed to be how it is. This is not the fairy tale I dreamed about. This is not who I married. This is not what I signed up for. And none of that is true. That is just that is not true. I fell in love with him. I chose him. We chose each other. God placed us together. It was definitely not a mistake. And we are exactly right for what each other needs. But in the middle of the grief process, we both didn't believe that.
Right.
It's just taken, I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe 12 years or more to come to that acceptance. And then we can, from a healthy perspective, set appropriate boundaries and give appropriate grace and all of the things that come with that.
And then for you too, then, John, you had to go through the grief process and accepting this. Are you at a place of acceptance where you are fully?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a stage where they say, I'm one of you, you're telling me I'm one of those guys that is on medicine the rest of their life, or if I'm off the medicine, it's gonna go crazy again or whatever, that kind of thing. There's this I'm not one of those guys. That's not me. I'm a high functioning, performing, successful guy, like that kind of thing. And I've come to accept that I definitely have something that I've been given genetically, whatever you want to call it, that's come out that I deal with. And that comes out with anxiety, depression, paranoia, different symptoms that we've been able to identify. But having a proper diagnosis, having proper medicine, having a care, someone in your life that you can turn to for helping you identify what's going on, that's a partner in this situation, is totally necessary for me to be able to thrive.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. I mean, we moved out here and we took a class 3 times through our church called Reengage. And I think it's funny that it's called Reengage because I always didn't engage.
Yeah.
And Reengage was a couple study on relationships.
16 weeks.
And 16 weeks where you get into small groups with other couples. You hear their stories in a small group private setting. And everybody expresses in a counseling setting what they're going through and what they've dealt with. And I got to sit there in the first session and listen to everybody's affairs and all these different problems and things like that and go, well, I don't look that bad after all, do I? No. But each session, we did it 3 times, it really helped us re-engage as a couple,
Yeah.
reignite the flame of love between ourselves,
Yeah.
and get to a place where we understood that it's a covenant relationship that we've made, not a contract that you can just rip up.
Yeah.
God basically, my personal opinion is that marriage is like your relationship with the Lord, with God, that if you can't stay married for a lifetime, how are you going to love God for an eternity? There's a marriage covenant that you make with each other to try to go through thick and thin and health issues and sick or healthy or whatever the vows are that you go through. But ultimately, I feel like we started with a typical marriage issues and challenges, faced many left-hand turns and right-hand turns that we didn't expect to go through. And through hard work and through dedication to stay together as a couple, we're in a time period where we're flourishing now more than we ever have as a couple in all areas, from communication to intimacy to finances to we're there is a blessing in this that we would never experience had we given up.
Yeah.
When the locusts have stolen our,
Yeah. It felt like that for sure.
Our joy and everything like that. I feel like God's really restored it and brought our marriage to a thriving place.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
But it was through a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think your stages of grief were apparent to me, and that I could see that you were angry and why did God make me have this? And I don't want to take these meds because I don't want to have to take them forever. I'm fine. Sometimes even now you say, are you sure I still have bipolar? And we still talk about that. So it's ongoing. It's not like, oh, we've accepted it and we're good. Oh no, it's ongoing. We still have cycles. We still have moments of, I don't like this at all. I go revert back to, this is not what I signed up for, or you're not loving me because you're sleeping. Like, we definitely still cycle that, but it's still an encouragement to know that we're not going to give up.
Yeah, I mean, and I too have had my own personal challenge with my relationship with the Lord, with God, feeling kind of like scorned, like, why would you give this challenge to me?
Yeah.
I was your golden child. You were blessing me so greatly in my
Yeah.
career and my life, and I was always having such great experience. Why would you choose to let me go through this? And so that has something I had to work with and work on, to the point where at one point I had a hard time worshiping. I had a hard time going to church. I would continue to call myself a believer and a Christian, but there was a area in my heart that was challenged by the fact that I was struggling,
Yeah.
so hard with this.
Yeah.
And that had to be accepted and worked through to the point where I am
And
today.
sometimes the devil gets a foothold and comes back in, and we are back in our stages of grief again, and we're angry and crying and upset and in denial, and then we get to acceptance again. I mean, it doesn't go away
It's
ever. I
ongoing.
wish I could say it did. It doesn't.
So, and
No.
then you guys, though, what did you do on your 25th wedding anniversary?
That is a big deal.
Mm.
So let me backtrack a teeny bit, because up till this point, right before we moved here, so that was about 7 years ago, I was done. Like, we were just roommates. When we
Yeah.
moved, we were just roommates. Like he said, it was a Hail Mary. When we started re-engage, it was because he made me go.
Mhm.
I had tried all those marriage things. I had tried all those intensives, all those books. None of it worked. I was done trying. We were just going to raise our kids. And we had to sign a paper that we would be committed to taking the 16-week course in the beginning. And I refused to sign it. I was like, no, I don't think you're going to do the work. I'm tired of doing the work for both of us. I'm not signing it. And he says, well, I'm signing it. I'm like, well, good for you, because I'm not. And you can't join a small group until you both agree. So we went to this open group for several weeks until I agreed to sign it. Fast forward then, after we've gone through it 3 times, I, coming to that acceptance, was able to save up some money and buy new wedding rings. I got to go to Ireland with my mom, and I had them made in Ireland for us there without him knowing, paid cash so he wouldn't know. And when I got back from Ireland, I proposed to him again. And I said, this time I really choose you. Will you marry me again? Because bipolar and all, and our kids were all there when I proposed, filmed it and everything. And he said yes, thank goodness. And then, so that was in like September. And then that next year was our 25th. And we went to the Bahamas, where we originally honeymooned, and we got remarried. We got a wedding dress, and the kids got bridesmaid dresses, and we hired a minister, and we had a wedding cake, and we even had a rehearsal dinner. And this is just our family, just the 7 of us. We had it videoed and photographed and everything, because that, and the kids all signed the wedding or the marriage certificate, because they were our witnesses that we were choosing each other. And so, yeah, that was a big deal.
That is absolutely beautiful. I think I cried when I saw that on Facebook, knowing you guys' story and what it was like. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is
Can't believe it's true.
wonderful. Oh, I always have hope, but oh, I know it's just beautiful. But I know that not everything is perfect still in terms
No.
of, now I know from talking to you maybe about a year or so ago, maybe a little bit more, and that there's still some things you have to do to monitor the psychosis and the paranoia. And so I know he's got to still take his meds. You guys got to, you're monitoring his mania coming up or whatever. But tell me
Yeah.
about some of that. So some of the limits that you put on Facebook and things.
Yeah. So you want to go?
Well, yeah,
Go
you
for it.
mentioned Facebook. I mean, that was a real stimulating mental thing for me, and a lot of the things that came out of that experience. I not being on Facebook all the time is a good idea
Yeah,
for mental
it was
health.
definitely a
Yeah,
trigger. It was during an election year, and he just got overheated debating with random people on Facebook about who should be president, and it triggered him. And then we were in a big episode, and and so to keep him safe and to keep our family safe, we had to take away his phone and his computer, and he took a break from work for a couple weeks just to get back to level playing field. And then we slowly introduced Facebook back in, but I, every time
yeah,
I can, every time I get a hold of his phone, I delete it.
yeah. It's just not good for me to be on Facebook and watching the news
No,
and cycling on
it's a
different
trigger.
world events.
We
And
know it's a trigger. He knows it's a trigger, but it's a temptation, just like anything else.
yeah,
So, and because we have the obsessive compulsiveness, it's easy when you're stressed to do something that is numbing. And for him, scrolling is numbing. And so it's easier to do that than to face whatever it is that's causing the anxiety.
right.
I can point it out. Yeah, it's true. I can point it out to him, but he has to be in the right frame of mind to receive it. So he continues to scroll or he puts it away. That's his choice, but it's definitely something we're working on.
So you will mention it to him, but then you give him the choice. It's not like you are saying, like a parent, you cannot have that.
No, I'm
No, no, only when he was in the episode and the doctor told me I needed to take it away, but no.
Okay.
No. Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to, but no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I'm not I'm not treated as a child in our marriage or anything
No,
like that, or treated as a child is the best way I can think
yeah,
of calling it. I'm left to my own devices to do what I will and all that kind of stuff, but I sometimes don't always make the best choice as a parent, just maybe as just a guy, just being a male. I enjoy taking my mind off my stresses by reading the news or getting stuff. But what happens with me is I cycle on those thoughts and have
debates.
yeah debates and reactions that are not as healthy for me. So I just have to identify what my things
What your
are,
triggers are.
my triggers are, and
Yeah,
avoid those in a healthy way.
yeah,
And are you
yeah.
taking responsibility for that and doing that more and
Oh,
more
for
and saying
sure.
that's my job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I've done that much better at that. There's still times where like the episode may happen and I'm just not aware
Yeah.
until it's brought to my attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be off a little bit or whatever, that kind of thing.
We have a couple friends that like I said, we've trusted with our story, and they will text me and say, "Have you seen his post lately?" And I'll say, "No, what happened?" And they'll say, "Maybe you should check and go talk to him." And so
I
then,
don't even post anymore in the last couple of years. I just don't think it's a wise thing for me to do.
right.
To like I have posted where I've had instant message communication with people about topics and stuff like that. But that's what gets me going. It just starts my mind reeling and
Yeah.
cycling, and it's like
Can't
I
sleep.
can't do that. I just can't do that to
Mm.
myself. I just need to live kind of more calm and boring, boring, unexcited, like stimulation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same for all of us. I stepped away from the any type of political stuff for about 4 years because I
Sure.
got anxious from it too. And I just was like, I don't need it. It's not good for me and it's too negative and I love it. I'm
Yeah.
back to doing some of it now, but I have to watch it too. Not I don't have any mental illness, but it's just if I want to keep my anxiety level down or keep my self calm, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
Right.
all need to be calm and not anxious and wound up for to be a non-reactive person in our relationships in our families because if we're not calm then we're more reactive. So I love what you guys have to share because I think it's just an amazing apparently anomaly from what people have told you, but it's just an amazing example of how you can manage this together in a healthy way. But
Yeah.
it took change and growth for both of you
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah. If I could do it over, if I could go back to the first episode, I would have let my women's pastor come and pray over me. I would have told people we needed their help. I would have asked more and not hid more. And that obviously we know now we still have to be careful on who we tell, but I think that I would do it different because I didn't understand it. And obviously I did the best I could then, but the different I would do is I would ask for help. I would not try to do it alone. And I would search up any book or class or group or anything that I could find that could help me walk through it and not try to wish it away.
Exactly. Well, and I think too that it takes reaching out, obviously, but but it's difficult because, like you said, it had there were some ramifications that you experienced, unfortunately, but hopefully
Yeah.
I'll give the resources in the notes of some groups that people can reach out to, and they
Yeah.
can find hope with that. What would each of you offer a word of hope to those couples that are managing a mental health diagnosis in their marriage?
My word of hope is kind of like I said a little bit earlier, is that at the end, if you stay committed to each other, God can bless your marriage.
Yeah.
God can bless what has really fallen apart
Yeah.
and bring things to a place where I've experienced more joy and more fulfillment in our marriage in the last 4 to 7 years than I have at any time in my life. And there's a connection with my wife that is better. There's a healthier way of living that is better. There's a joy for getting up in the morning that I'm experiencing as the person with the mental health issue that I, at some points, couldn't even fathom being in the place where I'm at today at some point. So it can, with God's help and a lot of hard work, get to a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the biggest revelation that I had in the last 30 years being married is the fact that Jesus loves me in spite of my issues, and he calls me to love him as Christ loves me. It has changed my whole perspective on what it means to be a child of God and what it means to love your spouse the way Christ loves you. So it allowed me to have mercy and grace for him when he honestly wasn't doing it on purpose. Not to say that sometimes they're not on purpose, but I think that giving him grace and loving him in spite of his actions are what changed the way that I perceive our marriage. I may not like everything he does for a long time. I may not like it, but I will still love him the way that Christ loves me. So there is hope. I don't know how someone without the hope of Christ could do it. It really would be quite difficult because without having that assurance of hope of salvation and that Christ loves me, I don't see what hope I would have had because it was really, really hard and felt very hopeless. But because I knew Christ was with me, holding my hand, lifting me out of the mire, like I said in Psalm 40, I could love him that way. And that is what brought us through it.
Yeah, definitely. And you both have needed outside support and outside
Yes.
help in order to navigate this. So,
Yes.
but having that assurance and having that hope in the Lord, I agree. It's like that strength is it's just through anything we've gone through
Yeah.
COVID, through the problems, it's like we've got I have people that I know that aren't saved and they're like, I'm afraid all this is going on, and they're like, aren't you afraid? And I'm like, I'm concerned,
No,
but I'm not afraid.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
God holds the universe in his hand, and I know
That's
what
right.
he's doing, and I have faith and I have trust. So afraid? No, I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it sure is like a comfort and a hope. So, but you guys,
Yeah.
I just pray that this podcast helps so many couples, and I'm just going to just pray that the people will find it and they will reach for answers, and that they'll listen to your story.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you both for saying yes. You could have said no. You could have said no. We don't want to say risk, but I appreciate
Yeah.
both of you, that, maybe God will use you both someday to
Yeah.
to others who are struggling with this, and be a light in the darkness for them too. So
Yeah, we hope so. The
Thanks.
first time we've ever shared it together, so it's a big deal.
yeah,
We
it's
hope that it changes lives too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to put you over in that group of couples that are doing fantastic, that I know, that have gone through lots of problems, and I love to be able to
Yeah.
say that people are doing great. So thank you so much.
Yay.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening. And I hope you'll share this podcast with people who are struggling with mental illness in their marriage, and let that be some encouragement to them and to give them hope. So thank you. And I will see you back the next time. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Change My Relationship. We hope you will subscribe to these podcasts and share them with your friends. Carla would love to hear from you. She welcomes ideas for future podcasts, as well as your feedback on how the podcast have helped your life and relationships. You can email her at carla@changemyrelationship.com. For more information on Change My Relationship and Carla Downing's ministry, including her books, studies, devotionals, podcast, and YouTube videos, visit changemyrelationship.com.